Okay. Hello and welcome to the PR episodes with me, Jim James. I have got Gemma Flinders who's joining me today. Gemma, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you because, Gemma, you are the PR lead at a company called Digital Bison, and you've got so much experience on tech and AI. Have I got that right?
Yeah, well, it's Brave Bison, and yeah, I'm like over 10 years veteran now in the digital marketing industry, and probably about 6 or 7 in digital PR itself at this point. So I'm pretty
Great.
old in this game now.
Well, if you're old, I'm a geriatric. Gemma, sorry, Brave Bison, my mistake. Now, Gemma, you're on the show today because we want to talk about whether AI is going to transform the PR person from being invisible to becoming expendable, right? So we've all been using tools like ChatGPT, Midjourney, Jarvis, and so on. And you're in a great position to help us to understand what that's going to mean for the PR executive, for the client, for the agency owner. So, what I'd love to do is to ask you, first of all, to just tell us a little bit about your background and give us your overall theme of, do you think that AI is going to make your public relations executive invisible or expendable?
Yeah, so I think for me, I've seen the industry change massively since I started. I started when it was pure link building, and you would buy links, you would do link exchanges, you would guest post, all of that, like right from the beginning, to what it is now, that it's using these traditional PR tactics to uh, gain those links that are going to have an SEO impact. So what I think is that for AI, and how that fits in is to make us better PRs and not lazier PRs.
Well, and I think that one of the things that we'd love to do is to talk with you and get the view that you've got, because you just wrote an article about, PR people being invisible. Um, what did you mean about that? Because, where I ran an agency for nearly 30 years in Singapore and China and India, called East West Public Relations. And, being on the agency side, we might have felt a bit invisible in terms of the, work with the client, but we certainly had a big presence in as an industry. Do you think that PR as an industry is going to become, even more invisible, going to fade away then because of AI?
I think it's down to individuals. So, what I meant by being invisible and like the faceless talent is that in PR, particularly in agency PR or freelance PR, a lot of our work is white labeled with the client's name. So we might put our heart and soul into a campaign that will go live, get loads of links, go viral, social shares. But at the end of the day, the client's name is on that campaign, is on that piece of work, and it's moving on to the next piece. And you don't really get the recognition. And I think that is why PR as an industry has a really bad rep for big egos and being very noisy and just being a loud kind of presence, especially on Twitter, which can be kind of perceived as quite negative because it's a lot of boasting, but really it's just a lot of people trying to get recognition for the hard work, and it is hard work, especially because there's so much competition. And then you bring in something like AI that people are starting to use to kind of replace the actual work, but really it's not something that can replace PR. It can just enhance PR, and I think that is the kind of difference we need to establish.
Okay, let's dive into that a little bit, and maybe if one of the Prowley team could put in the chat, we would love to hear from anyone watching this, listening to Gemma Flinders speak. Let's find out what levels, how many years of PR to people that are watching this live stream have. If you could put that in the chat, how many years of PR experience you've got, that'll really help us to kind of gauge the level. I personally have nearly 35 years of PR experience, Gemma. So I'm at we used to send people faxes when I started at PR. I'm dating myself a little bit there. Gemma, let's go into a little bit of the detail. What can AI actually be used for in the agency or as a freelancer?
Yeah, so I think the thing to remember is to be transparent about your use of AI in your job. So it should never be an excuse to kind of not do something to your ability. It should be used to kind of help you produce your best work. So, for example, research is a fantastic research tool. If you're in an agency or if you're a freelancer with lots of different clients, it can be really hard to come up with ideas for every single client in all of these different industries. And it can lead to a bit of kind of idea burnout because you're constantly being asked for these ideas. So using AI as kind of a research tool is a really good application because you're not saying do the work for me, you're saying inspire me and give me some ideas of something that I can produce using my knowledge, using my skill set, but it kind of gives you a boost. And as well, I think it's unrealistic to expect everyone to be experts in every industry because there's some things that, you're not going to just grasp. So being able to know what's topical in certain industries that you might not have a lot of experience in is going to help you and help your research. So asking ChatGPT or distinctly have a tool called Headline Grabber, and you can put in topics and the client kind of niche or what publications you want to target and get it to feed back some headline ideas in order to kind of make your job a little bit easier and to kind of start you off on the right path.
Gemma, that's really, really excellent because in the old days, we used to have to read through magazines from an industry to see what was trending. And when you got a new client, you'd spend the first couple of weeks just sort of researching.
Yeah.
And now from what you're saying with AI, you can turbocharge that down to, minutes or hours rather than days and weeks. So that's got to be good for everybody, Gemma. What about the sort of content creation side? Because we all know that, writing that press release and writing that pitch, writing that client bio, writing the case study, those take a lot of time, but also they're core skills of the agency copywriter. What role can AI play in, as you say, not replacing, but if you like, augmenting and enhancing the skill sets in the agency?
Yeah, so I think for me, what I found is that it's really good for giving points to cover within articles, within like the campaign copy, or even like I know there are tools out there that do this too, but different ways of presenting data, for example. So if you're bored of saying half of Brits do this or blah, blah, like how else can you phrase that to make it more impactful? Maybe give it a list of like the headline stats and get it to pick, which ones work together, which ones are like more impactful as a whole, kind of helping with the narrative. And then when you have those pointers, you can structure your piece yourself. And I think as well, if you're a freelancer, for example, sole trader, you're on your own, there's not going to be anyone you can lean on for a fresh pair of eyes. I mean, you might have like a friend or a fellow freelancer, but of course, if you've got similar clients and there's going to be a conflict of interest there, so you don't want to be sending all of your campaign copy, you don't want to be sending your press release copy to those people. So using it to kind of just go, like, sense check this. Can you make sure this is grammatically sound? Can you make sure there's no typos? Because obviously you can spell words right in Word, for example, but it's the wrong word, or you've like put the wrong word and it won't flag as a mistake. And then suddenly you send it out and you've ended up sending 100 press releases with the word pubic instead of public. And then, you've got egg on your face, you feel a bit rubbish about it, and it can take a toll on your.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the case that you've chosen there, particularly, I might have found another one, but tools like Grammarly, of course, are very helpful for doing that. And I find using ChatGPT is good for a first draft, but I find I need to use Grammarly, for example, to make it local for British English, for example, to put the U's back in to words like parlor and color.
Yes, yeah, it should always be sense checked. Don't take it as gospel.
Yeah, no, and Gemma, that's great. What about correspondence with the clients? Because we've talked about the research, we've talked about creating the copy. When you send content to the client, or if you are a client and you're receiving material from the agency, what's your view about, declaring whether AI is being used? Do you leave it invisible? What's your view? Because handing content to the client creates, doesn't it, some expectation on the side of the client? They think they've paid top dollar for that work to have been done by a qualified member of the team. Tell us your view on how AI should be communicated with the client.
I think so. I don't think that AI should do all your content writing for you at all. I think it's using your skill sets as a professional, your knowledge of structure of what's going to be picked up by press, what's if you have SEO KPIs, what's going to help boost rankings, what's going to be classed as helpful content to Google, and so on as well. But if you are in a position where you have used it, then I think transparency is kind of key. And I think that's across the board for AI. I don't think anybody should be hiding the fact that they're using AI in any aspect, because that is when, we start to become replaceable. We start to lose trust with clients, with journalists, with fellow peers, for example. So I think the whole thing of AI is you need to be transparent about if you've used it, why you've used it. If you've used it for surveys, for example, there are companies out there that are offering AI surveys. So they won't actually ask real people. They will give a set of people based on demographics and will answer the questions as if, it is being answered by people, but it's AI. And I think there's a few ways you can go about that. You can be clear and be like, this data was collected from AI with these parameters. You can use it as comparison data with real people, like this is what AI think is important to Britons, this is actually what they think. Or you can be deceptive, and I think that last one is what we want to avoid if we want to keep reputation.
Well, and especially as we've seen the cases, for example, where ChatGPT was used and found legal cases that didn't exist, right? Sort of phantom content. And some of the content on the internet is not verified in the first place, right? As we've seen with like American elections, for example, or even around Brexit, there's a lot of fake content out there, and ChatGPT can't differentiate whether it was an original piece of content or something actually created by a bot. Gemma, right? So we have to have some human intervention there. But Gemma, if you've declared to a client that you use ChatGPT, let's say, or Jasper AI or AI Writer, for example, Peppertype, there's quite a few of these guys out there now. What is stopping the client from saying, hey, you know what? This agency, I like the person, but I don't like the bill. And if they're using AI to create these pitches and do this research, I might as well just do this myself in-house and save myself the money. What's your view on that?
So I think it's important to remember that the client isn't just paying for deliverables. They're paying for the years of experience and, our knowledge as professionals. Like, you can say to ChatGPT, write me a press release about this using these stats, and it will put a press release together. But is it going to know that it's going to be right for the target audience? Is it going to approach the right press contacts? Is it going to be in a way that's, more effective? No, it's just going to have a look on the internet, find examples of press releases and tailor it to be what it thinks the perfect press release is going to be. And then, you might get lucky and get loads of results from that, and great, clients save some money. Or it could backfire. You could have a negative response. They could find out that it is ChatGPT and lose that trust with the journalists forever.
So I think that's a great point that you've moved the conversation onto, which, I've sort of gone through the value chain of research to content creation to dealing with the client. And obviously the next part is dealing with the journalist. I'm not sure whether we've got any journalists listening in as well. Here we go. What do you think is the response of journalists to content created using AI? And let's move away from ChatGPT, because it's not, in itself the noun, and I mean, it's one of the other, just one of the services. We've got all these others as well. What's your experience of journalists who are now under threat, of course? I mean, jobs being lost in the newsrooms, on receiving material, pitches, case studies, long form articles,
Mm-hmm.
bios that are generated by the agency using AI?
So I think it's really important to remember that one of the key parts of pitching is personalization. And if you are sending out an AI piece, like how personal is that going to be? And is it going to, raise a bit of a flag with these journalists? And I think as well, because of the threat of job losses and the fact that it is happening, like we have seen it with publications making loads of like redundancies and so on to replace with AI. There is going to be a personal kind of hatred of this AI and this like want to protect themselves and not really want to kind of engage with it. And I actually found some stats from Digital Third Coast that asked journalists whether they know if they've received an AI pitch, and 3 out of 5 said they don't know, or no, not to their knowledge. But then when asked, what would they think if they did or found out, and 100% of the journalists asked said that they wouldn't trust the PR again. So is it worth the risk to do that? I don't think so. I think our media relations, as much as it's less personal nowadays because they don't necessarily want to go out for lunch or have the time to go out to lunch, we can't really pick up the phone. Do we want to kind of break any of those small relations that we have with journalists? And it's just not worth it.
It's a really good point that you would start with the media with a position of trust and ideally of relationships. I mean, in my day, at the risk of dating myself, we used to go and meet journalists, and hand them a transparency, and we'd have a contact sheet of transparencies, and we'd give them a physical transparency of a picture of a spokesperson, for example. So the relationship is still central, isn't it? And the position of trust that you have between the client and the media is absolutely central still to this role. Gemma, what about user-generated content where the clients can start to generate their own content and the agency can be creating content and publishing it on their own channels? We talk about PR, but one of the aspects of PR now, and I'm sure that you guys are doing this now at Brave Bison, is helping clients to create their own content. What's your view on using AI for text, audio, video for client websites and client social channels?
So I think it depends on what the content is for. So at Brave Bison, we have something called the Bison Bot, which allows us to create thousands and thousands of product landing pages where, it's a very laborious task because it will just be about this thing. And it's very kind of top level, just the facts, and it doesn't need the personalities because it is just stating facts. In that case, we are very transparent. The client knows what they're getting with that. It's a service that we provide that they kind of sign up for. But as far as anything else, I think, Google is quite savvy about AI to an extent. And I think, with the helpful content update and this latest core update hitting a lot of sites, I think now more than ever, it's important that there's the human touch of knowing, is this going to be helpful to the audience? What can I add in that's going to help them out, rather than just being like a robot and kind of running off, I've covered this, I've covered that. It's like, well, you need to be able to engage as well. And people need to be able to kind of relate to that content, or at least find it helpful. And I think on some aspects, that is going to need human intervention.
Gemma, what do you see as being the change in the nature of the relationship between the agency and the client as a result of AI?
I think it's important for agencies to present the opportunity of AI, because you would be naive not to know that it is something that's happening. There's no point kind of guarding the client from the fact that this is something that's out there. It's something that everybody's talking about because they know it. Everybody knows it. Like, even if you're not in digital, you know about AI. I think it's more of a case of being upfront with the client about what AI can help with and how it's being used, and maybe presenting stuff like the Bison Bot, where we're actually giving the client something that before would have taken days and days and days to produce, and we are offering a solution that uses AI in order to do that a lot quicker. And I think it's just like it's a balance. But like I said, like there's no way that, in my opinion, you can just cut out the people, because you're not going to know what to prompt AI with, even if you were just like, oh, I'm just going to take over. It's like, well, no, because you're paying for the ideas, you're paying for the experience. And even if AI is utilized to kind of, excel that content, or, make it a bit better, or for research, then you're still going to need that first point. And I don't think that a lot of clients have that kind of level of expertise within their in-house team.
Yeah, and in my experience as well, having worked with big companies, the in-house PR people are as much worried about the internal administration of PR, getting the information from product managers or from sales managers and so on, and the internal navigation of content and news. They rarely had enough time to go outside and look at what was happening. The agency played a really important role in consulting those in-house people on trade show viability or new product launch opportunities. And I think that's just the same with AI, right? We become really trusted advisors, and people in agencies are really experimenting. And like you're doing with Brave Bison, building a bot, right? You're really innovating. That's a really amazing demonstration of how agencies can be at the forefront of making AI valuable to clients. Gemma, with your experience now of over a decade in digital PR, are there some practical tools, some expertise that you think anyone watching this today could take away?
Yeah, so I think, as I've said a few times now, it's important that we don't use AI to make ourselves lazy and take us out of the equation. It's to help us be better at our roles. And I think there are a lot of ways that we can do this as digital PRs. So, for example, expanding data analysis. Everybody that knows me knows I'm really passionate about data. Obviously, that was what my online PR show talk was about. So, some formulas have wacky names, so there's no way you could just guess what formula you're going to need, because it doesn't marry. So by asking AI, and I keep using ChatGPT because it is free, and I think that's important for like freelancers and those that already have a lot of bills and can't be affording these extra AI tools. Asking ChatGPT or whatever AI you have access to what you need the formula to achieve, and then it can tell you what formula to try, and then through trial and error and practice you can expand your data analysis skills. And I think that's super important. And same if you've been handed a spreadsheet from a data team, if you're lucky enough to have one, and they've used a formula and you're like, that don't know what that means, and I don't know how to explain how you got there. Taking that formula and getting ChatGPT to break down what each section of that formula means is invaluable, because it'd be like, oh, okay, so that's doing that, that's doing that. Okay, now I get it. I understand, what's happening here. And I think that's really important, again, for knowledge. I've kind of covered headline variation a bit as well. Going back to Distinctly's Headline Grabber, not only can it give you ideas for titles, but it can also give you variations. So you can pick tabloid, broadsheet, shocking, or informative. So if you're like, well, I would, or even like ChatGPT as well, if you give it the parameters of, I would like this headline rewritten to appeal to a Sun UK journalist, then it will give you some ideas of how you can do that to kind of better pitch your subject lines and stuff to the right audiences. And I don't think that is lazy PR. I think if you're going out to loads of targets, I think it's smart PR. I'd like to be able to utilize, because you've done the original work. It's just helping you tailor that. And in the same respect as well, like getting to know your publications a bit as well, or what publications to target. You could be like, give me a list of publications in the UK that are online that would be interested in XYZ, and then it can give you a list to start off with. And I think if you're going into a new industry, that's invaluable, because it gives you a starting off point, because you used to be able to use Google parameters for like relevant sites, and I just don't think they work as well anymore. So this allows you to be able to like, oh, I've got a list of these publications, and then you can start off from there. So yeah, I think they're very handy, practical uses of this AI that we can use to just help be better professionals.
That's wonderful. I think also an area that we haven't touched on today, but there are AI, monitoring tools, of course, now as well, and sentiment analysis, which is enabling us to do the other part of the equation, feeding back to the client, isn't it? The reporting and the evaluation of what we've done, which used to be a manual process where we used to, buy magazines and newspapers and do clippings and photocopy them. And I was based in Asia and Hong Kong. It was illegal to photocopy them. So that caused all sorts of challenges. But now AI is enabling us to do media monitoring and analysis and reporting to clients in near real time too, isn't it, Gemma?
Yeah, and I think that for a lot of agencies as well, they're kind of using the AI technology to set up like dashboards and stuff like that gathers this information and puts it in kind of a real-time, constantly updated format. But I think as well, again, it's great that you have that, but you still need the professional to provide the context. So it's good that they can access that, and for shareholders, like stakeholders and those kind of C-suites that don't really want to hear the nitty-gritty, they can just be like, well, yeah, those numbers look good, that line's going up, great. But for your direct contacts and the ones that are more invested in the everyday, then you would need to provide more context as to what has influenced that and what's the next step and so on.
Gemma Flinders, the digital lead at Brave Bison. In our last couple of minutes, if there's one key takeaway that you would like to leave anyone watching today's PR episodes brought to everyone by Prowly, what would it be? What would you like to share with people as the rallying cry, the takeaway from today?
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, use AI to be better, not to be lazy, and to always be transparent. So do not use AI and think, oh, I'm going to get away with being secret and I'm just going to be playing a game while, I've said that it's going to take me 2 days to write this content. I've actually just chucked it in AI. Like, don't do that, because eventually you will get found out and it'll be horrible. And we don't want anyone to not trust our industry, and we want to be a positive industry. There's a lot of really bright minds in this industry, and I just don't think that we need to be like that. We don't need to be lazy, but we can be using it and utilizing it as something that will make our jobs not easier, but it'll make our work better.
Gemma, that's wonderful. And I'm reminded of when the internet came in, again, maybe dating myself a little bit. I started my agency in '95 in Singapore. Wow. And we just had right, we sent originally press releases as letters. And then the internet came in and clients said, oh, I just send print. I don't want to see anything in by text or by fax. And then the internet came, and then people had to start to build websites, and they had to start to build email, and then journalists were a bit wary about it. And then it was video, and then it was text messaging. AI is another transformative moment for all industries, but PR agencies really adapted and grew into that technology change with the internet and multimedia.
Well, they are now, and I think that obviously, as I said, I started off in link building, and that was SEO, and now it's kind of like PR and SEO met, and now we have digital PR, which kind of meets the needs of the SEO KPIs and those kind of goals, but then also has developed PRs into being more digital, to being more tech friendly.
Yeah, and I think if anything, it makes us even more valuable as PR practitioners and agencies, because for the client to keep up with this is so hard. And we're in it, and we're delivering and innovating as you are over there at Brave Bison. Gemma, if people want to find out about you, how can they contact you and follow up with your great work and initiatives on this?
I can be found on LinkedIn and Twitter, mainly in a professional capacity, sometimes professional on Twitter. And obviously, with hair like this, I'm easy to spot as well. So I have people who have run up to me as well, because they're confident that they know my hair. So yeah, but obviously, not to sound gross or cliche, but you can DM me, message me anytime if you want to chat. And obviously, I'm even happy to have calls if you want to discuss things further. I'm happy to share.
Gemma Flinders, I'm sure that people will want to both see you because of your amazing hair, and it's beautiful. I'm
you.
going to resist any urge to say I'm jealous of what you've got there. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the PR episodes brought to you, everyone, by Proudly. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about AI today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's been our pleasure. So we've been listening to Gemma Flinders, digital lead at Brave Bison over at St. Neots here just outside Cambridge in the UK. And if you've enjoyed this, do please leave a comment below, share it with a friend or a colleague, and join us for the next episode of PR Episodes brought to you by Proudly. My name's Jim James. Thanks for joining us.